All right, so Riley, go ahead. If you'll just tell us who you are and tell us your surrogacy story.
Should I go again?
Yeah, go ahead. Go again. Take a minute. Say a little bit more than that.
Okay. My name's Riley. I'm a college student in Connecticut, and my mom, this is her second surrogacy.
Okay. Awesome.
Hi, my name is Edison. I'm the son of 2 gay parents, and I've been in New York City my whole life.
My name's RJ. My mom's also a surrogate. She's had a lot of them, 5, 4, something along those lines. Twins twice, crazy. 18, don't go to college. I'm from Connecticut.
I'm Jeremiah, and I'm 12 years old, and my parents are gay, and yeah, that's all. And I've lived in New York my whole life.
Take this out. Okay, so how did you? Let's start with Jeremiah and Edison. How did you come to know your birth story? Was there anything in particular that kind of helped you to understand that process?
My what?
Your birth story. How did you come to know that you were born through a surrogate?
I guess I known my whole life. I don't really know exactly.
Okay.
I just know that my parents were gay and that they needed a surrogate to have children, and yeah.
You don't remember a point in time where you were told the story, or was it just something that you always just knew?
There was a story that my parents just thought of having a baby, and so then my dad right there, he decided to donate his sperm for me. So then I became made, and I was put in a surrogate, and that's how I was born. And yeah.
Okay. Edison?
For me, I grew up not really thinking about it. It was something that was super normalized to me. I didn't think about it pretty much all through elementary and most of the part of middle school. It was just kind of a fact of my life. And then I think at one point, I don't remember a specific date or anything like that, but my parents explained to me like the process of me being born, because sometimes kids would question it. They'd be like, you don't have a mother, so how are you born? So I think from asking my parents that, they finally explained it to me, and I think I was at an age where it was a lot easier to understand.
Okay, so for RJ and Riley, how did your mom kind of explain about becoming a surrogate, and how did you feel about that when she had this, or did she have a conversation with you, or was it just happened one day she was pregnant? You can start with RJ.
I could start. She's been doing it since I was very young, like 1st, 2nd grade young. So I don't remember too much from the time, but I do just remember her explaining to me in the most basic way that a child could understand that she was carrying a baby for someone else that wouldn't end up being my sibling, and that didn't really make a difference to me. She was carrying a baby and she was my mother, so I treated it as if it would come home with me, and if it didn't, when it didn't, that was perfectly okay with me because it was someone else's to begin with. But that didn't mean I should treat it any other way, and she didn't really explain it to me all in one big chunk. It was kind of in as much that a 1st grader could handle.
Riley?
So for me, I was in high school already, so I understood what's going on. I'm queer myself, so it was like kind of exciting, like having the communication with the parents. And I know my siblings are both young, and we'd have Skype calls weekly with the parents, and so like just having that really like made them understand a lot easier, I feel. And
Is there anything for any of you guys that kind of helped you to understand the process a little bit more? I know we get a lot of questions about this. So do you ever like a book that you might have read about this, or any videos that they talked to you about, or has it all just been kind of verbal conversation?
No books, no books. My dad just told me that he was gay, and I thought, oh, that's all right. It's like just 2 same genders loving each other, and I never thought anything about it, that it was weird or anything. Because I don't think it's weird. I think it's just 2 like people loving each other, and that's fine, and yeah.
For me, The concept of surrogacy in general, I feel like to me was always a lot more common sense than other people. Like the most frequently asked question would be how I feel or how other people feel about like my mom having sex with the surrogate parent. And I kind of always understood, like even if I didn't know the direct process, I kind of always understood that you need an egg and a sperm. So they take an egg and a sperm, fertilize it, and implant it in the mother, however that situation works. And all it really took for me was a couple quick Google searches along the way about the specifics kids asked. And Google can tell you anything that a book can.
Yeah, for me, it was always verbal. It wasn't any type of video or book or anything like that. Like I mentioned prior, you know, I was at an age when I first, you know, because it was so normal to me, I never really questioned it. And so at the age that I started questioning it or trying to understand it, it was a lot easier for me to understand.
What is your relationship with your both your egg donor and your surrogate? And for our surrogates' kids, you know, what is your relationship to the surrogate family, to the children who have been born, to the parents? Jeremiah, do you want to start?
Wait, can you ask a question?
I sure can. What's your relationship to your surrogate and your egg donor? Do you know them? Do you know who they are? Do you talk to them?
It's pretty close. I know her. She's visited me a lot. And I kind of thought in the beginning that she was just one of my parents' friends, but soon I thought of her just like kind of a half mom, half not. But I thought of her still as like my parents' friends or like an aunt. She was really nice, and I'm going to visit her in Texas in January for New Year's. It's gonna be really fun, and she's had carried a lot of babies, like 9 or so. And yeah, it's just really cool to know that even my siblings are also from her, and then we have contact with her, and yeah.
For me, I have always had a relatively close relationship with all the families. The younger I was, the closer I felt like I was to the families, and once I hit a certain age, 15, 16, 17, and stopped spending as much general time with my mom as I used to when I was a lot younger, I obviously became less involved in the families and in her pregnancies in general. But one family in particular that she carried for her second surrogacy, they were a wealthier family from the Hamptons, and we would go up and visit them frequently at their house. And one week over the summer, they actually invited me to stay by myself at their house with them in this huge mansion with an in-ground heated pool in the backyard. And I was like a 9, 10-year-old kid, and they had a 10-year-old kid as well, and we got along great, so it actually became a very good friendship for a small amount of time.
For me, my process of birth is a little different. It's like, for me, my fathers were dating when they decided to have children, and so my father mixed the egg, his sperm with the egg of his partner's sister, and from there they screened for a surrogate parent. And so I've never, besides obviously the day I was born, I've never really talked to my surrogate mother. I just know of her name, and besides that, I don't have any kind of contact with her. But of course, for the egg, donor, which was, my father's sister, I see her very much as an aunt. I see her a lot whenever I go. I visit my family, my grandmother, anything like that. So she's just more of an aunt to me.
I just want to ask real quick, do you have any desire to talk to your surrogate more, to know her more, or is it just kind of like, yep, she carried me and I'm good with that?
I don't think I have much of a desire. It's nothing I really thought about because I don't have any blood relation to them. I never really thought that I should get to know them or anything, especially because where they are in Indiana, I've never really gone there in a lot of time, for anything. So I don't feel like I should visit there just to meet her or anything like that.
Thank you. Riley?
So we, like my family, we have good relations with the parents. There's like Skype calls weekly, like they've come and stayed at our house. We like went out to eat at Easter, so it's kind of like uncles almost to like me and my siblings.
And is your mom caring for the same couple?
No.
Okay, so the first couple, right? Because she had a baby, what, a couple years ago. Okay, so do you have the same relationship or the same communication with those parents as you do with the current parents, or is there a different relationship? And especially with the child, do you know the child? Have you met him, her?
I haven't met the child because I was in school when she was born. Was I in school or was it? Yes. So, but I'm like still Facebook friends with the parents. Like we don't, like it's not as close, but there's still like the relation there.
What has been the response from your peers, both, and then the same questions for all of you, the response from your peers about this experience, has that changed over time or with age? Has it been different, when you were younger than it is now? And we'll start on this side, change it up.
So like all of my friends are queer, so it's kind of just like, oh, that's pretty cool. You have a dope sounding mom. Or like some of my friends be like, oh, I could never, but there's a real like, just general understanding.
For me, I've never really had any type of problem with any of my peers in, all throughout elementary school, middle school, high school. A lot of kids are pretty confused about it at first, and I don't think a lot of them even really understand now. But I've never really been friends with anyone that had a problem with it, because if they had a problem with it, we probably wouldn't be friends regardless. So yeah, I've never really had any type of problem. I just stay away from any kind of kids that, have some type of homophobic, tendencies or anything like that.
Yeah, I answered a similar question yesterday, but just to reiterate a part of a story that my mom said, I went into class in first grade and she came in pregnant, and my teacher asked if it was going to be a brother or a sister to me when she wasn't there, and I told her it was going to be a cousin. And she asked my mom, like, what is he talking about? And I was in first grade. I didn't know what was going on, but in general, people always have a ton of questions, and they would ask them to me at any age as if a third grader or a second grader knows exactly what's happening, and that kind of forced me to learn more. But in general, my friends have always been very supportive of me and my family in general, particularly my mom. She treats all of them as if they're her sons themselves. So whenever she would get pregnant, those who were close to me knew that it was typically going to be a surrogate. And the only question they really would ask me is how much money she gets for it. They're thinking she's breaking the bank by carrying this baby for people, and I tell them she is. Shoot, like I hope so at least. I've never discussed how much she gets paid or how much she doesn't get paid, but in my opinion, if you're carrying a baby for a family, then I'm assuming she was well compensated. But the people who asked a lot.
I got 500 grand in my pocket. And I'm like,
The people who asked a lot of questions were usually the people who weren't particularly close to me, but I would always try to answer the questions as civilly as possible, even if they did come off as slightly offensive questions to me or my family. And people don't tend to mean that, so I always tried to answer them as genuinely as possible.
Agreed.
I think you make a really good point about that. Most people's questions are not meant to be disrespectful. It just comes from a place of ignorance and not knowing. Not very many people know how the process works and how that is. And you had asking about your mom and who she was with, and I had the same thing with people asking, well, how does your husband feel about giving up his baby? It's not his baby. So people just don't know. And I generally find, sounds like you found that, once you kind of explain, oh, okay, now I get it. Jeremiah, the question was the response from your peers and from your friends.
My peers would usually, most of them didn't care, but there was they would just be like, oh, that's cool, and didn't really say anything. And there was some kids be like, oh, that's weird, that's gross, you're having two dads, how are you made, are you adopted? And I would say no, and I would tell them how I was made, and they would be like, that's not true, or sometimes they would believe me, sometimes they wouldn't. And I didn't really care what people said because it's true and stuff, and it's just like my parents are gay and that doesn't really matter and doesn't like affect me in a negative way. And people might be like, oh, now this person's weird, I'm not gonna be friends with them. That's happened to me like once or twice. And it's just like if some people would say like, oh, that's so gay, and I would call them out for that because gay is it's a way of loving each other. And same if I said, oh, that's so straight, or even though straight is another way of loving each other.
I think we covered this a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are there questions or comments, either good or bad, that you get regularly?
Not really. Maybe there'll be someone like just randomly on the street saying like, that's gay. And I won't really say anything if they say it more and more and just keep saying that, then I'll call them out for that. And usually people are fine with it. They think, oh, that's kind of cool. And they ask how I'm made, and I am pretty happy about that because I tell them that so I can educate them and tell them how I was made and know that when they're older, they know how people are made, gay kids are made. But usually, sometimes they're adopted or the surrogate, and it doesn't really matter. And yeah.
I've touched on a lot of questions I've got already, but another one would be people that wouldn't even ask me about like anything to do with my mom's pregnancy. And then when it would come up randomly that I only have one brother, that my mom only has one other kid, people would genuinely try to tell me that I'm lying to my class and my teachers. Like, no, that's not true. I've seen your mom pregnant 3 times in 3 different years. So you're not going to tell me that. And it's just crazy that I had been friends with some of those people for like 5-6 years, not close friends, but I went to the same middle school as my high school. So from 6th grade on, they'd find out in 11th grade I had one sibling and think that I've been lying my whole life about how many kids my mother's had. And I try to just explain to them what surrogacy is, and you'd be surprised how difficult it is for a junior in high school to wrap their head around surrogacy.
Either of you guys, any questions or comments that come up regularly that you have to field? Or did we cover them?
For me, it's just like, so I went to a fairly liberal high school and college, so like I don't get a lot of like the homophobic remarks like you were saying, but like I get a lot of questions about just like the science behind it, or like you were saying with like how much money is she making? So just.
Yeah, for me, I mean, there's always been little red flags that have popped up, you know, people saying that's gay or whatever has always been whatever. But when I understand that a lot of kids, it comes from, like you mentioned earlier, it comes from a place of ignorance. It's not necessarily any type of hate, and they don't even think twice about it. So I try not to get mad about any type of thing like that. I just try to explain it to them, and if they aren't willing to listen, then that's on them.
This is a really loaded question. You do not have to answer if you don't want to, okay? And so I'll just let you pop it out if it comes to you. But have you ever felt maybe considered or wished or thought that you'd come about a different way, or that your mom had not been a surrogate? And do not answer if you don't want to, but was there ever a time that you were like, man, I kind of wish I had my life like this?
Oh, no, definitely not. I think of like, when I was really young, I thought, oh, basically one of them is a mom and one of them is a dad, and I just thought of them both as just same gender parents, and it didn't really matter. And a lot of people that ask me, like, ask me questions about my parents, and they said, oh, that's cool. Like, dads are better than moms anyway, because like, they allow everything. And I said thank you usually, and I thought that was pretty cool. That, well, in like elementary school, that I had 2 dads, so they would let everything happen. But then when I got older, I thought, like, they're both strict and they're both the same. And it didn't really matter to me because I didn't care if I had a mom or a dad, or a dad and a dad, or a mom or a mom. It just mattered if I had parents.
Thank you.
For me, I've never really had any type of thoughts, maybe in a moment of anger, thinking something I didn't necessarily mean after arguments with my parents. But I've never genuinely wished to have a straight family because for me, it's always been normalized. It's never been something that I thought was weird myself because I just grew up in that type of household where I had two fathers. And especially, here in this city, you get to meet a lot of people, and a lot of my friends only have one parent, or they have families that are split up in pretty violent ways. And so the fact that I have two parents that are together and peaceful is something I'm always grateful for. So, yeah.
Thank you. You guys, anything to add on that piece?
For me, it's been a really positive experience because I feel like through doing this, my mom's become a lot more understanding and accepting of me. So I feel like it's been a good impact.
At least for me, I can't really speak on it because other than my parents being divorced at a very young age, I've had a pretty generic life up until now with not too many variations from the normal. But in my experience with my mother being a surrogate, I can speak on behalf of her, and I'm sure she would say the same, but when she cared for a homosexual couple for the first time, I have never seen two more excited, two happier, and two more prepared people to have a kid. And they seemed like they genuinely would love that kid more than any other straight homosexual people I've ever met, and it really gave me a different level of respect.
Thank you, guys. I usually like to leave time in this for you guys to ask some questions, so I'm just going to ask you guys one more question, and then we'll open it up if you guys want to ask something to any of us here. What advice do you have for all of these prospective parents out here, both in terms of their surrogate journey and how they can do that in the best manner, and as potential parents?
Probably to stay in touch with them, with the baby, and even after the baby when it's born. Because a surrogate is like the person who gave birth to your child, and that's very important because it's the person who gave life to your baby and that volunteered for that, and which is really nice and awesome, and which in my opinion I love that I had a surrogate because it's someone who gave me life and that she volunteered to give me life. And then just be a good parent in general, and it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, or lesbian. It just matters that you take care of the child and educate them, so they won't think that gay is wrong when they're older. But to educate them at a young age, so they know that being gay is amazing and being anything is amazing, and yeah.
Thank you.
So just to touch on how he finished, I think the most important piece of parenting coming from an 18-year-old is knowledge. As long as you keep your child involved and as knowledgeable as you possibly can, then I feel like there's not too much of a way you can fail as a parent. In the same sense as we were just talking earlier, where a lot of the hate speech and a lot of the kind of offensive speech that people get is because of ignorance and not understanding, I feel like it should be everyone's duty as a parent, first and foremost, to rid their child of that ignorance and that sense of hate towards any kind of person, and lead by example. Be nice to everyone regardless of sexual orientation, of race, of gender. Just be nice to everyone, and that's the only way you can expect your child to do the same.
Thank you. Edison?
Yeah, I would agree with what they both said. I think knowledge is super necessary, so there isn't any type of shame developed, as long as it's, normal to them and they understand that there's nothing wrong with how they, were born. I think that's all because I think besides the way that they're born, they're the same as any other child. So, you would treat them as you would treat any other kid.
I feel just like open, honest communication is important between like the surrogate and the parents and the children, just making sure, like because kids have a lot of questions growing up and just not trying to keep things from them, but like letting them know like this is normal and like educating them is.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a few minutes left, so if there's anybody who has questions for these kiddos or for myself or anybody else, we've got a few minutes to take those. Nothing? I don't buy it.
I don't know, maybe I can just direct
Yeah, of
one a
course.
little bit. Because they're soon-to-be intended parents, the two surrogate, the children of surrogates, do you have any advice for how they can connect with their surrogate's children, or how they should approach communication? Should they let the children of the surrogate kind of dictate like how close they get, or should they be proactive in that?
So the question was, in case you couldn't hear, is how can how can you guys, as you embark on this journey, make sure that you're connecting with the kids of the surrogate and building some sort of relationship with them?
How I feel, it's mostly about how the kid feels. If they're a kid who's maybe a little more reserved or who doesn't feel as comfortable with this situation as they possibly should or could, then don't try to push any sort of relationship with them, because that's only going to make them possibly resent the whole situation. But if there is a chance, try to make a connection and try to find something that you guys share in common. That's how you should be able to make friends anywhere in your regular life and treat them as just another friend. Another thing is try to treat them as adults, even if they are children. There's nothing a child hates more than being treated as a child, even if they are one. So try to show them the same level of respect that you would show their parents and the person who's carrying your baby, because the kid is, believe it or not, making just as big of a sacrifice as anyone in the situation is, halfway losing their mother for a 9-month period. No matter how close they are, pregnancy is still a time-consuming and difficult thing. Just try to keep as positive and open-minded with the kids as you can.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it comes down to like if the child wants to make the connection, but like building that connection can be really like meaningful for both like the surrogate to see like the connection there, and like that builds like the trust, and like even like it being more ready to have a kid by just like communicating with the kids that the surrogate has.
Thank you. Any other questions? Really? Nothing? I know we did cover a lot. You guys did fantastic. So, yeah.
And please, a big round of applause to these guys. Thank you so much.